central banks are a tremendous danger. They are all heads of a criminal organization. Danger. 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 Democratic states are deterioration. The democratic equality before the law is something completely incompatible with the idea of one universal law applying to every person in exactly the same way. Everyone can become king. Everyone can become king. Everyone can become king, so to speak. So to speak. So to speak. So to speak. It exists in the form of the difference between a higher public law that applies to public officials and a lower private law that applies to regular folks. Under democracy, everyone is equal insofar as entry into government is open to all on equal terms. If as a private person, I simply take your money out of your wallet, this is considered to be a criminal offense and I will be punished. If as a public official, I come to you and do exactly the same thing, this falls under public law, is considered to be a legal activity. So to speak. If as a private law, I take you and beat you up and force you to work for me day and night, this would be considered kidnapping, slavery, and whatever, and is of course a great offense. If I do that as a public official, then it is called public service, military draft, and things like this is perfectly all right. Everyone can engage in theft and live off stolen loot if only he becomes a public official.
Hey, I'm Jose Galison. Welcome to another No Way Jose. Long time no see for those followers of this series. It has been a long time, but we're back at it again, surprisingly by popular demand. This show has been a parapolitics show for quite a minute. Now we're digging back a little bit into the theory. It's probably been hundreds of episodes, but we'll get right into it, right as if we never stop. But before we get into that, I do want to take a moment to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at NWJ Shave Co. If you're tired of that razor burn irritation, those ingrown hairs that come from those multi-blade cartridges, this is the way to go. You can go back to traditional shave. You don't need to use that nonsense. You can shave just like your grandpa used to. Like, let me run through you how this is better. I mean, it gives you a much smoother shave. It jacks up your face way less. The difference here is a single blade safety razor using one blade dragging across your face. That's going to give you, like I said, a smoother shave, and it's only going to be one blade dragging across your face, thus less damage. It's also a lot cheaper. Give you 10% off as well if you use Jose at checkout, and it is and it's $75 for the first year, and after that, you're just getting razors. So, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's cheaper. It's better for you. And then on top of all of that, this is a company that's generally going to align with your values, considering you're watching part 17 of A Democracy That God That Failed series. This is likely going to fall in line with your values. It is a COVID mandate refusing company. And let's be real, you guys likely have some neck beards you need to shave off. So let's edge those suckers up. And with that, let's get one of the neck beardos in here himself. Mr. Toad, what is up, my friend?
What's up, man? It's been like a year. I don't think I've seen you since.
Yeah, right now we see each other every Wednesday. But yeah, we just haven't happen to do one of these. My schedule has changed now. I was going one episode a month or a week, and now I'm doing 2. So it opens up to get some of these. And I surprisingly, as I said, this is the one series I have multiple unfinished series because I'll just kind of pick up things. And this is the one that like I've actually surprisingly got a lot of people that are like, when's the next episode coming out? And they're like, I mean, I guess whenever I get around to it. And now we have gotten around to it. So
I don't even
try
believe
to
that.
sneak these in for you occasionally as time goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had to refollow you on Twitter, by the way. Something's really going on. I don't know what the hell's going on. I looked at your page to see if this was on there to like retweet it, and I'm like, why am I not following Jose? What the fuck?
Was that on desktop?
Yeah.
It does that sometimes. I've seen it do that, but then you go click on their page and it shows you are following them. So, but anyways, that
Maybe I
aside,
unfollowed you.
yeah. Well, it's a glitch, I think, in the desktop. But either way, I guess you ready to go ahead and get into it? I'm not sure if we'll knock out this chapter today or if we'll break it into 2. We're kind of at a lengthy chunk, and we're not quite sure how it'll go. But I figured I'll pass it off to you, Toad, to go ahead and start. And I think I think how we were doing this before is we'd read 2 pages, trade off, and because a lot of them would get like a lot of footnotes, and the font's kind of large, anyways. And we kind of just trade off and just kind of maybe pause between paragraphs for kind of commentary if there is any to be had. And yeah, that's kind of the vibe here. But I'm ready to break into it. It's been a while since I've really dug into theory. I think it's interesting too because we're in the middle of this on conservative and libertarianism chapter, and we since the last time we took on the show, some new stuff have happened in current events. Hopefully the series is evergreen, but we're at a different point now where the conservatives have taken power, whereas before the conservatives were not in power. So we're different parts of analysis on conservatism throughout this, and also in real world we're dealing with them being at different points of power. So I think maybe we might have a little bit different perspective on some things in this chapter today, but we'll see. With that, Toad, let's go ahead and get to it, bud.
Yeah, I mean, I try to like throw in some like tie-ins to what's going on in current events. So hopefully it's still evergreen, but hopefully whatever we talked about in the past, people like if they go back and watch, they'll remember that stuff as well. But just as a little bit of if people are following along here, we are in the chapter on conservatism and libertarianism, which I think is chapter 10, and we are starting on page 199 here, which is where we left off last time at section 3, and we were talking about Pat Buchanan and his conservatism not actually being true conservatism because he was promoting some sort of welfare state, and hopefully that's enough context, so let's get into it. Most contemporary conservatives, then, especially among the media darlings, are not conservatives but socialists, either of the internationalist sort, the new and neoconservative warfare, welfare status, and global social democrats, or of the nationalist variety, the Buchananite populists. Genuine conservatives must be opposed to both. In order to restore social and cultural normalcy, true conservatives can only be radical libertarians, and they must demand the demolition as a moral and economic perversion of the entire structure of Social Security. If conservatives must be libertarians, why must libertarians be conservatives? If conservatives must learn from libertarians, must libertarians also learn from conservatives?
Yeah, I agree with them on the Social Security thing. I mean, I will admit it's probably not like the priority. And
Yeah.
you shouldn't go full on Hornberger about it. But I mean,
Right.
even then, that is a. I do get frustrated with, for some reason, why they always seem to pussyfoot around Social Security, even the libertarians. But no one ever wants to touch entitlements, and that's definitely the thing. It's always the ongoing trend among conservatives. It's kind of like we know they don't mean business. Between that and Israel, it's kind of like we know that certain things aren't going to be touched. The military is going to shrink. Entitlements are never going to be touched, and Israel is going to keep being funded. And those are the things you can kind of count on till the day you die.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, I myself got into it with Hornberger, the Georgia debate about that, because myself and a few of the other guys were saying, well, like in the current state of things, you actually do need some sort of like rollback of Social Security that's going to allow like certain people to not get completely screwed over by it, like the older people who have already paid into it. Because otherwise, like if you just abolish it, like, I mean, yes, that's what we want as an end goal, but like you'd wind up still screwing over a lot of those people. So I think there's got to be some, like, we're dealing with reality here. Basically, it's kind of, maybe I've changed a lot since we last did this this series, but Yeah, I'm kind of dealing with more like the realistic side of things
disagree
now.
with that. I mean, I think like there's probably ways to do it in some sort of scaled back way that would make sense. But I don't know. I feel like, but our generation, I'm not even counting on Social Security. So, like, I mean, whoop-de-doo if they cut it off for us. But yeah, if someone's 10 years out from collecting benefits, it does make sense that it would. I mean, I don't know, there's got to be some sort of a scaled way they can do that. That's not that crazy, but there's no will for it. And but at the same time, you need the abolitionists that are pushing for it. So, but with that, I guess let's keep pushing. I don't know what more we really have to say. This is obviously just a preamble to kind of get us set into this.
Yeah, I mean, just like you were saying, like the media darlings of conservatism right now, we see so many of them. Yeah. They're all promoting like Israel right now. A bunch of them are, at least, like the Daily Wire folks, obviously, people like that. I mean, you know who we're talking about, Ben Shapiro. Definitely an example of that. They're promoting the welfare warfare state. So what he's saying here holds true today.
It's pretty interesting too that now we're that mentioned, considering we're in this weird spot where the new development between where we picked up last time is, I guess we kind of had been predicting for a long time that like the establishment media was dying, but it's basically dead now. I mean, it's like beyond dead, beyond life support. Everyone's jumping ship to podcasts up into including Gavin Newsom and the like. And so this does, now that we're kind of covering this, we're seeing the new order and kind of filling this role. So, and the people that were considered the alternative, the Tim Pools, I don't know who some of the other ones that come to mind, the Cernoviches of the world are now the Daily Wires. They're kind of becoming the Fox News. They're becoming the next establishment. So.
Yeah, I mean, I separate Tim Pool and Cernovich. I think Cernovich is actually decent on the Israel issue, if I'm not mistaken. And Tim Pool, no, he isn't. Tim Pool certainly is not.
Friendly.
But,
he's just friendly about it. But we're not here to talk about Israel.
Whatever.
He's pro-Israel. He says it himself. He's just
okay.
He's someone who just does makes fun of him when they throw hissy fits. So
all right, fair enough.
Being ridiculous about it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm too much of an individualist, man. So I'm still looking at what people are saying individually. But I would say like Candace Owens is certainly on like the anti-Israel side of it. She has like a huge platform over one side. I would consider her faction to be like the new order of conservatism, and then the Daily Wire side of it, or like the Tim Pool side of it, is the Jew order side of things.
All right, let's get moving.
Oh, I'm still reading. What am I doing?
You're still reading. That's why I kept giving you the cue. Let's go.
Oh, we got to get used to
it. You provide another line of commentary. Okay, that's the confusion. I was like, why does it keep fucking talking?
We're never going to get done.
No, read next.
First,
reader.
First, a few terminological clarifications are in order. The term libertarianism, as employed here, is a 20th century phenomenon, or more accurately, a post-World War II phenomenon with intellectual roots in both classical, 18th and 19th century liberalism, boo, and even older natural law philosophy. It is a product of modern Enlightenment rationalism, culminating in the work of Murray N. Rothbard, the fountainhead of the modern libertarian movement, and in particular his Ethics of Liberty. Libertarianism is a rational system of ethics, law, working within the tradition of classical political philosophy of Hobbes, Grotius, Pufendorf, Locke, and Spencer, and employing the same ancient analytical conceptual tools and logical apparatus as they do. Libertarianism, Rothbardianism, is a systematic law code derived by means of logical deduction from a single principle, the validity of which, and this is what makes it an ultimate principle, i.e. an ethical axiom, and the libertarian law code, an axiomatic deductive theory of justice, cannot be disputed without falling prey to logical, practical, praxeological, or performative contradictions, that is, without implicitly affirming what one explicitly denies. This axiom is the ancient principle of original appropriation, ownership of scarce resources, the right of an exclusive control over scarce resources, private property, is acquired through an act of original appropriation by which resources are taken out of a state of nature and put into a state of civilization. If this were not so, no one could ever begin to act, do, or propose anything. Hence, any other principle is praxeologically impossible and argumentatively indefensible. From the principle of original appropriation, the first use, first own principle, rules concerning the transformation and the transfer, exchange of originally appropriated resources are derived, and all of ethics, law, including the principles of punishment, is then reconstructed in terms of a theory of property rights. All human rights are property rights, and all human rights violations are property rights violations. The upshot of this libertarian theory of justice is well known in these circles. The state, according to the most influential strand of libertarian theory, the Rothbardian one, is an outlaw organization, and the only social order that is just is a system of private property anarchy.
All right. By the way, I'll take off over the next spot because it rolls into the next page, which is super short.
Yeah, it's
okay,
one
well, that was
single
just
paragraph,
giving
yeah.
a definition. Obviously, the first one kind of was poking fun at the conservatives in the first paragraph, a little bit kind of where they fail, and maybe kind of where we kind of line up. Second paragraph, kind of just defining libertarianism. Really, obviously, kind of its roots in history, which it's done a bunch. It does this in a lot of these chapters, kind of redefines things as is fair to do.
Yeah, I mean, property rights, obviously, I agree with that. The state constantly violates property rights. Obviously, all of that is correct. I probably would take issue, well, not only with, like, some of the people that he shouted out there, but I would probably take issue with I think he's oversimplifying how property rights acquisition occurs. Like, I don't think it's just a first use. Like, I don't think that's enough. Like, I think you have to basically prove that you are going to actually be, like, constantly maintaining that, like, particular property. You know what I'm saying?
Like if you leave it in disuse or something, like
right.
Okay.
Like if
all right. Yeah,
I can't just go piss on, like, some ground somewhere and be like, I own this, even though I'm never coming back here again.
Yeah,
like,
there's some level of reasonableness to it. Like, you can say you mixed your labor in it by kicking the ground, but it's like, no, not really.
Right.
It's kind of like you need to be building something or maintaining it, some sort of, like, now this is where it gets a little bit more vague, but it's like, it's kind of, to some extent there becomes this, all right, we know you know that this is fucking mine. Like, let's not get overly complicated about it. I get what you mean, though. Something can leave in a state of disuse. So maybe it's oversimplifying it, but I know that would be a whole other conversation. I do think it is somewhat fair to leave it to first use, to some extent. So because, like, I don't know, maybe I don't know. There might be some sort of argument of, like, if someone leaves a piece of property in a state of disuse, at some point, I think it's, like, fair to say, like, I don't know, is this really their property anymore? They're not. They have nothing to do with it. They probably don't even know it even exists. But this is a whole separate other conversation. He's just defining what libertarianism is. For the
people
most
are going to
part,
go into your abandoned house and start smoking crack, man.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but no,
we're libertarians. We agree with that.
But yeah, he's just defining. It kind of comes down to property, and he's kind of defining how rights works for libertarians, which all rights are property rights, which. It's a point I try to make. There's so many times people say, oh, we have a right to this, we have a right to that. I mean, it's been an ongoing joke on my morning show because there was kind of like a sort of weird argument between me and Austin about, like, whether you have a right to water. I was like, no, you don't have a right to water. Right. And we're like, oh, what about it's necessary for life. And, like, there's lots of things that are necessary for life. They're like,
shelter. Like, I mean, like,
and it's like
do something
by that logic,
you
get to, and by that logic, if you have a right to it, that means you can just come take my fucking water, and I have no recourse. It's not fine.
I'm coming right now, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though I have my own, I want two waters.
And it sounds crazy because the implication, people's like, oh, so you just want, like, people to, like, die from not having water? I'm like, no, I would give you water. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, but it's just, so then we got to recognize that, like, how property rights work. And also, there's rain that comes down. It's also very rare that someone's going to create a monopoly on an entire water source of some sort. That would be pretty insane. But anyways, that aside, he's just kind of defining, giving the historical precedent of it, how libertarianism is derived from liberalism, although,
I
believe there's a huge portion in the beginning where he kind of defines Mises's form of liberalism and how vastly different it is from the liberalism of today. And I mean, it's kind of funny how very often
in the next chapter, he talks about the errors of classical liberalism. Yeah.
But let's go ahead and keep moving.
Yeah, and the one other thing that he did point out is just that libertarian, like, 101, like, simplification thing. Like, it's axiomatic, basically, that if you don't own yourself, then you can't even act at all. So he just made that point again. But, all right,
he was. Going. Yeah, that's exactly making the point that, like, so I guess that would be some people of just jumping on this might miss the point he was driving at was that like the idea that like if you don't have property rights, you can't even do anything. And that's his whole point, the idea that you own yourself. And so like if you're saying you don't agree with property rights, in a certain sense, you are at a logical root saying that you can't even act because you like there's no agency, like you don't own yourself. Right. So like and from there like then spreads out. But all right, let's keep going. It says, I do not want to further analyze or defend the libertarian theory of justice at this point. Let me only confess that I believe the theory to be true, indeed to be irrefutably true. Rather, I want to turn to the question of the relationship between libertarianism and conservatism. The belief in a natural social order based and centered on families. That's how he's defining conservatism, is the belief in a natural social order based on and centered on families. Some superficial commentators, mostly from the conservative side, such as Russell Kirk, have characterized libertarianism and conservatism as incompatible, hostile, or even antagonistic ideologies. In fact, this view is entirely mistaken. The relationship between libertarianism and conservatism is one of praxeological compatibility, sociological complementarity, and reciprocal reinforcement. Man, I nailed all those words. Yeah, okay. So that one is just kind of pointing out kind of the crossover. And he's kind of pointing out that there are those out there who think that they're incompatible, and he's obviously leading into his next argument that's going to be how they are in fact actually very compatible, and I tend to agree.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, what we see right now, it's like you can tell that like the conservative just faction of like the U.S. voter base is like way easier to like agree with and reach as a libertarian than the like left Democrat side. So there's definitely something to that. Mm-hmm. There's more alignment there for sure.
All right. Well, all right. Let me keep going. And then I get one long ass paragraph and it's on to you. In order to explain this, let me first point out that most, though not all, leading libertarian thinkers were, as a matter of empirical fact, social cultural conservatives, defenders of traditional bourgeois morals and manners. Most notably, Murray Rothbard, the single most important and influential libertarian thinker, was an outspoken cultural conservative. So was Rothbard's most important teacher, Ludwig von Mises. Ayn Rand, another major influence on contemporary libertarianism, is a different matter, of course. While this does not prove much, it does prove only that libertarianism and conservatism can be psychologically reconciled. It is indicative of a substantive affinity between the two doctrines. It is not difficult to recognize that the conservative and the libertarian views of society are perfectly compatible, congruent. To be sure, their methods are distinctly different. One is, or appears to be, empiristic, sociological, and descriptive, and the other rationalistic, philosophical, logical, and constructivist. This difference, notwithstanding, both agree in one fundamental respect, however. Conservatives are convinced that the natural and normal is old and widespread, and thus can be discerned always and everywhere. Similarly, libertarians are convinced that the principles of justice are eternally and universally valid, and hence must have been essentially known to mankind since its very beginnings. That is, the libertarian ethic is not new and revolutionary, but old and conservative. Even primitives and children are capable of grasping the validity of the principle of original appropriation, and most people usually recognize it as an unquestionable matter of fact. And I actually think it is kind of beautiful that he points all this out, because one of the great things, especially with Hoppe, given his argumentation ethics, is how he kind of bridges the gap between those who would say objective morality, subjective morality, religious or objective truth, or subject, like essentially between religious or non-religious, in the sense of argumentation ethics. Essentially, you can look at that as a principle to completely understand how to bridge that divide right there. The concept of argumentation ethics, which I guess we're probably not going to get into too much, but it's kind of the idea that it's essentially a ground by which you kind of agree that if we want to have a functioning society at a certain level, like you have to understand, like, I don't know, Cody, actually, you want to do a quick breakdown of it? You look like you're kind of chomping at the bit for it, actually. So, but you get what I'm driving at. The idea that, like, even you can look at it from a non-religious perspective and just kind of at the very basic, like, you have to recognize this very simple principle, and from there, everything kind of comes out. And if you believe in not violence, essentially, you're kind of agreeing to that it makes more sense to behave in this manner.
Right. So argumentation ethics essentially is that if you are arguing with somebody over something, you are therefore choosing to argue rather than resorting to violence, like as like a first recourse, essentially. And you are therefore basically already giving up. You're already what's the word I'm looking for? You're already conceding by doing that the fact that the person that you're arguing with owns their own body, and that you know that if you were to punch them or something like that, then that would actually be violating their property. So by arguing first, therefore, you are already conceding that fact, essentially, if that makes sense.
I think it's also the idea of that you're trying to get them to change their mind is simply a recognizing of them having agency over themselves or something. I don't know. It gets convoluted and gets very metaphysical, but essentially it's a way to kind of bridge the gap, and like the idea here is that you can kind of drive this down to a single, like, I own things, and like as you brought up before, the kind of the idea of you owning yourself, and from there like everything goes out, and if we recognize that I own me and you own you, and we kind of recognize each other's rights, and the idea that I'm not able to, I'm not able to destroy your property or, do anything to your property that I was not wish. You have the exclusive agency and control over your property, me to myself, and that's the same reason why I can't do things like kill you or rape you. It's because you own you. I mean, violating the most intimate property there is, which is yourself. Right. And then everything from there goes out. From there, you, with your will, your ego, whatever you want, you mix your labor into things, unused property, or you find other people who have property and you make exchanges or they gifts or whatever. And from there you go, that's mine, and people recognize it. And they go, I own this thing, and that's kind of an extension of you. And so it's just this intricate thing. But at the end of the day, this is like even the animals in the jungle, a lot of them kind of recognize it. Not all of them, obviously, but especially higher order animals do very much have concepts of ownership. This is where the whole idea of this is my domain, this is your domain, you stay out. Well, right. We may have different, you may get into the minutia of deciding what's legitimate for ownership, but generally speaking, I mean, there's some level of rationality that can be applied here. As we were kind of talking about earlier, that like if an unowned area that no one has ever really done or hasn't in a long time, and they build a house in that area, I mean, they build all the infrastructure up themselves. There's no reason to say that they shouldn't have any sort of legitimacy to that's theirs, and they don't get to. Right. You do not get to impede on that. You do not get to intrude on that. That is theirs, and it's perfectly reasonable for that's a safe area for you not to be able to impede on, and them to have exclusive control over.
Right, and I think basically what he's saying as far as the tie-in with conservatism is that like conservatives want to conserve sort of like the natural order of things, I guess, and also libertarians also do, in that you're considering like the natural order to be like basically what we just described. Like it comes down to property ownership. Although obviously conservatives, of course, do have some problems with that, as he's already been pointing out, but yeah.
I think you have dog shit internet, by the way, but that or I do.
I do?
That or I do. One of us does. We'll find out later when the tape plays back.
Ooh, shit. I don't think it's me. If you want me to check my, I have a media server where I'm usually like downloading stuff.
It's fine. It might be me. It might be me. If so, but either way, we'll keep moving. We'll be fine. It's on. I think it's your turn now. We're on 203 in the middle there. So it's yours now.
All right. Moreover, as far as the object on which conservatives and libertarians focus is concerned, on the one hand, families, kinship relations, communities, authority, and social hierarchy, and on the other hand, property and its appropriation, transformation and transfer, it should be clear that while they do not refer to identical entities, they still speak about different aspects of one and the same object, human actors and social cooperation. Extensively, that is, their realm of inquiry, frame of reference is identical. Families, authority, communities, and social ranks are the empirical, sociological concretization of the abstract, philosophical, praxeological categories and concepts of property, production, exchange, and contract. Property and property relations do not exist apart from families and kinship relations. The latter shape and determine the specific form and configuration of property and property relations, while they are at the same time constrained by the universal and eternal laws of scarcity and property. In fact, as we have already seen, Families considered normal by conservative standards are household families, and the family disintegration and moral and cultural decay which contemporary conservatives deplore is largely the result of the erosion and destruction of households, estates, as the economic basis of families by the modern welfare state. Thus, the libertarian theory of justice can actually provide conservatism with a more precise definition and a more rigorous moral defense of its own end, the return to civilization in the form of moral and cultural normalcy, than conservatism itself could ever offer. In doing so, it can further sharpen and strengthen conservatism's traditional anti-statist outlook.
Okay, so they're taking the perspective that the government impedes on the family via the welfare state, and this is kind of where we naturally, we kind of naturally lock swords with the should lock swords. Okay, not in a bad way. That's a bad metaphor to use because actually it can mean you're fighting. You know what I mean? Join forces with the conservatives in the sense that they, this would kind of essentially our theory fills out their theory, essentially, which it does. So they're essentially a lot of times when it comes to conservatives, they very much have similar theory to us. It's just their praxis is where they go to complete crap. It's like what the how. And they don't really have a fully realized version of their theory. It's like they haven't really come down to first principles. They're like, I like the Bill of Rights, or I like freedom, or I like... And you're like, hey, whereas we've gone to the point to where we're like getting to the metaphysical level where we're talking about like argumentation and ethics and stuff. So it's a I don't know, a level of curiosity and I guess being more resolute in your beliefs to some extent.
Yeah.
I
mean, I think essentially what... basically, I think what he just outlined over those last couple of pages is that he did say that conservatives do actually promote a welfare state. Like these modern conservatives do that, even if they're not really thinking about it or realizing that. And I think he's saying that that is contrary to what their end goal is, and that their end goal actually is the same as what libertarianism works towards or provides, which is maintaining the family, essentially. Because as you said, the welfare state actually like disrupts the family and causes it to disintegrate, because where traditionally like families would rely on each other like for help in certain ways and whatever, the government is trying to step in and fulfill that role instead in a much worse way.
We got all this race stuff going on right now again. And I mean, that kind of comes down to a lot, especially if you get into the black culture thing. I mean, you look at was it Larry Elder and all the cultural black conservatives always kind of point out all the you look at the stats, especially around the time when slavery ended, and you look how great this race or whatever was doing, and then once welfare came along, that's when all of a sudden it went the other way around, and now they're disincentivizing fathers in the house with via different forms of welfare, and the inevitable happens. They incentivize welfare, and when you what is it he says, when you incentivize a bad, you get more of the bad. So so
so
that's
whatever you
what
incentivize, you get more of it. Yeah,
exactly. So but yeah, let's I guess we can keep moving though.
All right. While the intellectual creators of modern libertarianism were cultural conservatives, and while the libertarian doctrine is fully compatible and congruent with the conservative worldview, and does not, as some conservative critics claim, entail an atomistic individualism and acquisitive egoism, corrupted by the modern welfare state, the libertarian movement has undergone a significant transformation. To a large extent, and completely so in the eyes of the media and the public, it has become a movement that combines radical anti-statism and market economics with cultural leftism, counter and multiculturalism, and personal hedonism. That is, it is the exact opposite of the Buchananite program of culturally conservative socialism, countercultural capitalism.
All right, you shitting on the libertarians, and we're still seeing this now. I know we had that small stint where the LPMC kind of had I know it was probably around the time we were doing this. The kind of more true libertarians, hoorah, kind of took over for a little while. I don't know where we were at the last time we did this. But it looks like, I don't know, you probably agree with me that now that slump, all the things I said before about how like, oh, you're just creating this bigger ship for the next fucking homos to take over.
Yeah, the slump
continues. And it
continues.
looks like the slump continues, and it looks like the homos are taking over the bigger ship, as I said.
Right.
So all this cool shit that the Libertarian Party's somewhat kind of accomplished in the period of time is now the homos are taking it back over because the energy's over and no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
And as well they shouldn't, frankly. But
right. Well, that gets into, like conquest second law, which is that an institution that does not declare itself to be explicitly right-wing is going to become left-wing. And like the Libertarian Party, essentially, the Libertarian movement has always attracted the left-wingers, and it's because of what he just said here, because that's the way that it's seen. It's seen as a vehicle for these people, like, to practice hedonism and stuff like that and think, like libertinism, like this is where I want to be. Like, because, well, that plus it's because, this is cool. It's something different. Like, I'm not right wing or left wing, man. Like, I'm a libertarian, which means that I can, like basically do whatever the hell I want. But that's not really what it's about. But that's how it's seen, I think, probably pretty widely by most people, like from the outside and whatever. And I mean, I guess to some extent we're trying to change that view, but then to another extent, it's like maybe we should just give up on the term libertarianism because we're obviously different from these other people, right?
I do like the angle he took here because it is kind of a funny angle. He was saying that the reason why the libertarianism is like this is he was taking the point that they are corrupted by the modern welfare state, which I guess I'm trying to understand, like, frame that. I don't know if it's just because the people they're appealing to and kind of the arguments he's made in previous chapters and the way that it shifts the culture. And now essentially we have this libertarian apparatus that is appealing to the culture. And to some extent, let's be real, there is like the Beltway concept of like they're trying to get in swarmy with it. But I think he's kind of making the same argument he was making from the previous paragraph about how the welfare state has affected the family. And now he's then pointing out how now that's bleeding out and even to our political movements to where now they're trying to appeal in some way to these people. Mm-hmm. And so now they're just implying this like hedonism and stuff. So now they're trying to appeal to that hedonism essentially because he's making the argument in this book about why democracy's crap and kind of how the way that the incentives that are put in place and how you're trying to appeal to voters. It's like, okay, well, the people now they're trying to appeal to hedonism. They're like, these hedonists, they're trying to do hedonistic stuff. And so now here comes libertarian goes, hey, guess what, guys? It's okay to be gay or to do this or to do drugs or do, which are all like, or prostitution, which are all things that are like, technically that's true, but it's like, I don't know. Obviously, it's a very different thing if you're like, well, I'm just looking at it from if you're coming in from a Hoppe view where you're like, but that's because we would have you in this like gutter covenant community that no one would want to live and be a complete hell while we're living cool over here. So like, it's not quite the same thing. His belief system is very, very, very culturally conservative. So, but I think he's making the point that just the welfare state and then the role that has in a democratic country and like how democratic vehicles play the democratic game, and like I think that's what he's trying to make. So because he's made that argument in previous ones, it's kind of convoluted, and I think it's kind of hard to come to it. And it's just a couple sentences. But having read this book, I think that's kind of the argument he's trying to make there. So
I think it might be a little bit of both. Like it's that because of all the welfare state coming in, and like the state can affect culture, even though also the state is downstream from culture. It's both really. I think it's a loop. And I think he is pointing out that because of the degradation of the culture, that's causing more people just in general and in the libertarian movement to be hedonistic, like you said. But I think it's that, and it's also like the regime libertarian side of it, where because that like welfare state exists as far as like sort of the political like corruption side of things, like you can get like political influence by like agreeing with these people in DC basically. Exactly. So I think it's both.
Yep. Both sides of it, and yet to the nature of the democratic beast, and like the incentives are in place and what they're trying to appeal to. All right, I think you got like 2 more paragraphs, or just finish this next paragraph. I'll take off after that. So,
all right. Earlier, it was noted that the Buchananite program of socialist nationalism does not seem to have much mass appeal, at least not in the United States. This is true to an even larger extent for the libertarian attempt to synthesize market economics with counter and multiculturalism. Yet, as was the case with conservatism before, in this case too, my central concern is not about mass appeal and whether or not certain ideas can be psychologically combined and integrated, but whether or not these ideas can be combined practically and effectively. It is my plan to show that they cannot, and that much of contemporary libertarianism is false, counterproductive libertarianism, much like Buchanan's conservatism is false and counterproductive. So I think sort of just continuing talking about what
Yeah.
we just said, basically.
Just
I don't know if he's
talking
really
more
adding a whole
trash
lot
about
there.
talking more trash about modern libertarians and how he's how he's hyping up that I'm about to drop some argument about how they're fucking all fake and gay, and that's what he's leading into. Yeah, it's just more of that.
Right.
So I'll take over this next paragraph, but yeah, he's building up to it. But all right.
Yeah.
That much of modern libertarianism is culturally leftist is not due to any such leanings among the major libertarian theoreticians. As noted, they were for the most part cultural conservatives. Rather, it was the result of a superficial understanding of the libertarian doctrine by many of its fans and followers. And this ignorance has its explanation in a historical coincidence and the mentioned tendency inherent in the social democratic welfare state of promoting a process of intellectual and emotional infantilization, decivilization of society. Boom. So we probably spent too much time doing commentary on what he was about to explain to us already, but that's exactly the point. Essentially, basically, kind of what we were saying, sort of. In the idea of what does he say? But he was actually more getting it from like a doctrine perspective, which I guess it makes sense. Think about how the party is. How often do they really not want to go down to like base, boring property rights, or it's always just like, the duopoly and like it's all just like, we're not left or right. We're socially liberal and culturally conservative, or whatever the hell this stupid saying, or not economically conservative, socially liberal, or what, like it's just
The Gary Johnson.
Yeah, just the lazy understanding, which is kind of the point of like in a democratic state, you're trying to get the most voters. So it is kind of the point we were appealing to, getting at before, that they have to appeal to the public, and the public is hedonists, and they're also the idea of that they're not. If you're trying to appeal to the public, you're going to the lowest common denominator. If you're trying to get the largest group, typically. And so you're gonna not. It's not gonna be really a high level understanding of property rights that are gonna be given out to people.
Right. He was saying he wasn't concerned with mass appeal in the previous paragraph. Although I kind of disagree with that. Like, I think you do want to, like, kind of grasp like some sort of populism wave, which is, I mean, kind of what has been going on with the like right leaning side of libertarianism, is kind of try to jump onto that right populist wave, because there is agreement there, and I don't disagree with doing that. Like, if you can kind of push them in the right direction on these issues that they're not good on, like, that is also another good thing, I think. But I think, like what you were just saying with the modern state of libertarianism, I actually think some of it is because of, like you said, the same flaw that there is with democracy, is that when you have more and more people, you're going to have more and more people that are wrong in that, like, mob of people. So if you have more and more people in the liberty movement, you're going to have more and more of them being homos, basically, which I don't think is a good thing. And I don't know that you can really, like, prevent that from happening, to be honest.
Oh no, I think it's kind of the nature of of how these political parties work, and I've actually, that's why I've made many arguments, especially back in my theory days. I mean, I'm not going to go about, but I don't really agree with utilizing the Libertarian Party politically. I don't really agree with using political entities in general. I think it's kind of a losing battle. But I know me and Hoppe slightly disagree on that. Even his is a very, very specific course of action that he provides and what must be done. So, like, he's not a fan of. He's far more probably on the paleocon side of things. But even then, his plan of action isn't really even dependent on a party. But it definitely far more latches onto the conservative intuition in many, many ways than it does in anything else. And I very much tend to agree with this. So, but all right, I'll pick back up where you left off.
You left off. You just read.
Oh, I left off.
Yeah,
I thought
you're
mine
continuing.
retarded. All right, the beginnings of the modern libertarian movement in the United States go back to the mid-1960s. In 1971, the Libertarian Party was founded, and in 1972, the philosopher John Hospers was nominated as its first presidential candidate. A little aside for me, real quick.
Homo, by the way.
Yeah, I find it interesting that 1971, that was when my mother was born. So just to give you an idea of how recent even the Libertarian Party is at all. It's within my mother's birth, so it hasn't been around that long. And
my parents are old.
Yeah, my parents are young too. So I had Anyways, it was a time of the Vietnam War, simultaneously promoted by the major advances in the growth of the welfare state from the early and mid 1960s onward in the United States and similarly in Western Europe. The so-called civil rights legislation and the war on poverty. A new mass phenomenon emerged. a new lumpen proletariat of intellectuals and intellectualized youths, the products of an ever-expanding system of socialist public education, alienated from mainstream bourgeois morals and culture, while living far more comfortably than the lumpen proletariat of old off the wealth created by this mainstream culture arose. Multiculturalism and cultural relativism, live and let live, and egalitarian anti-authoritarianism, respect no authority, were elevated from temporary and transitory phases in mental development, adolescence, to permanent attitudes among grown-up intellectuals and their students. Okay, he's like kind of intellectualizing the modern libertarian and kind of shitting on him. Kind of funny. He's saying they're basically just like children. They're like, oh, just live and let live, and like,
right,
ooh,
and there's
respect no authority, no gods, no masters. You know,
right, they're leftists. They agree with egalitarianism, which is obviously something that he shits on. Rothbard later had shit on egalitarianism as well. And like, I think what he's kind of pointing out here is that like during the Vietnam era there, you did have this wave similar to what we have today with like the anti-Israel war movement here, like the Free Palestine movement. Essentially, there was a similar movement, I would imagine, because I wasn't alive at the time, but during Vietnam, like a similar anti-war movement arose on the left. And yeah, good. Like they're opposing the war. That's good. But I think it also is the case that these people are homos who don't even really understand what they're opposing, really. Maybe back then they did more so than they do now, though. Like now they're just absolute retards, you know?
Mm-hmm. All right, let's bring this in for a landing. We're dang near done with this episode, bud. Right. The beginnings of this modern libertarian movement in the United States go back to the mid... Oh, I'm retarded. I just read that. The principled opposition of the libertarians to the Vietnam War coincided with a somewhat diffuse opposition to the war by the New Left. In addition, the anarchist upshot of the libertarian doctrine appealed to the countercultural left.
Right.
For did not the illegitimacy of the state and the non-aggression axiom that one shall not initiate or threaten to initiate physical force against others and their property imply that everyone was at liberty to choose his very own non-aggressive lifestyle? Did this not apply that vulgarity, obscenity, profanity, drug use, promiscuity, pornography, prostitution, homosexuality, polygamy, pedophilia, or any other conceivable perversity or abnormality, insofar as they were victimless crimes, were no offenses at all, but perfectly normal and legitimate activities and lifestyle? Not surprisingly, then, from the outset, the libertarian movement attracted an unusually high number of abnormal and perverse followers. Subsequently, the countercultural ambiance and multicultural relativistic tolerance of the libertarian movement attracted even greater numbers of misfits, personal or professional failures, or plain losers. Murray Rothbard, in disgust, called them the nihilo. I don't know how to pronounce that, but nihilistic.
Nihilo, yeah, I guess.
Nihilo, I guess would be the best. Libertarians, and identified them as the modal, typical, and representative libertarians. They fantasize of a society where everyone would be free to choose and cultivate whatever non-aggressive lifestyle, career, or character he wanted, and where, as a result of free market economics, everyone could do so on an elevated level of general prosperity. Ironically, the movement that had set out to dismantle the state and restore private property and market economics was largely appropriated and its appearance shaped by the mental and emotional products of the welfare state. The new class of permanent adolescents. Bam, going hard.
I love that. Yeah, I love that whole paragraph. I love that last line.
Good way to end, too.
I mean, it's more of what we were just saying. Yeah, we only got to 207, man. You were right. This is wild stuff here, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Got any thoughts on that before we get out of here?
Oh, man. I mean, it definitely nails what we see still in the libertarian movement, in the Libertarian Party. I mean, it's probably attracting even more of those people now. Like, if anything, it's just gotten even worse. Because, again, they think that libertarianism is libertinism. And, it's the non-aggression principle. So as long as I abide by the non-aggression principle, which, by the way, yeah, he lumps pedophilia in there. I would
they don't even know what the...
Most of them don't even
know what the non-aggression principle even is. And that's kind of was one of his main points. It's just like the infantilization. There's no theory. There's no real understanding of their beliefs. It's just, I want to be able to break the law and do gay stuff, basically.
Right, but they're also, the point is kind of that, like, but even if you do realize, being a homosexual is not like a violation of the NAP, so that means we should praise it, right? It's basically like that mindset, like, we should just do that. Yeah, we should all be a bunch of sodomites, basically. That's what libertarianism is.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's the thought of a lot of these people now. And he was talking about how, again, I think you were right about what you were talking about, like on the previous page or whatever, where he was talking about those people having been shaped by the welfare state. That's what he meant, that though it's because the welfare state has created those types of people through like demolishing the family and stuff like that, these loser hedonists basically, and now they're all in the Libertarian Party because they think that that's like where they belong. Oh, I could do this. Like this is my politics, man. It's the politics of being gay, basically.
All right, with that, brother, let's go ahead and get out of here. Let them know where they can find you at. I'll see you on Wednesday for another Tower Gang at 9/11 Eastern. Yeah. But let them know where they can find you. Let them know what other stuff you're doing. And I know your gambling show. For if we got some degenerate gamblers in my audience, maybe you can draw off a couple of them. But let them know what they do, where they can find you, all that good stuff. And then, we'll get out of here. Yeah, we got to do more of the Hoppe readings. We still got 100%. Probably several episodes left. Splitting it up into 20-something episodes, man. But I'm Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. You can follow me there for basically race realism at this point. That plus sports betting plus shitting on the homo libertarians, whatever else you want. I'm doing it all, baby. And ukulele covers. And I'm on the Tower Gang podcast with Jose, as I think everybody probably knows, which is the most offensive comedy podcast in existence. We're on Wednesday nights at 9:11 p.m. Eastern, and we are combining with Nephilim Death Squad, who one of our hosts, Top Lobster, also does that conspiracy show. I don't know. Do we call it a conspiracy show? I don't know, but they do that show, and all of us are going to be at Bohemian Grove in late June in Southern Florida, June 20th and 21st, is that what it is? Or 19th and 20th, whatever the hell it is. 20th and 21st, yeah. So tickets are going fast for Leesburg, Florida.
Leesburg,
the
Florida.
Tropic Theater.
Yeah, at the Tropic Theater. Go get some tickets, show up, meet us there. We're going to be doing live podcasts. We got live comedy. Sam Tripoli's going to be there, our own Benjamin. It's going to be a blast. And as you said, I also do Better Off Dead, Bettor, unfortunately, because the Google searches are like, do you mean better? Like the John Cusack movie? No, I do not. So my SEO needs to be a little bit better. But if you actually type it in correctly, you will get me. That is my sports betting show. I do it every day, at least once. And I lost today, but the playoffs have been going pretty well for me in NBA and NHL. So hopefully I keep that going.
Hell yeah. Well, that, brother, I appreciate you joining me. For those who want to support what I'm doing over here, can leave a like, share, subscribe, comment, leave a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify. You can follow me on Twitter at TowerGangJose. I mean, all of those don't cost you a thing, and those kind of help boost me up a little bit. But, hey, if you want to chip in $1, that's the best way to support me, what I'm doing over here. You can do that over at patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. The lowest level is $2. That's where you get access to early episodes much like this. I've cranked up my production to trying to do 2 a week now, having about 4 behind the paywall at a time. So you're getting this stuff weeks ahead of everybody else. It also gives you the $2 level gives you access to the ad-free RSS feed, and also gives you priority to the video calls on me and Austin's weekly call-in show on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. That is already dead. And also the highest level of my sponsors, I read them off every episode. Big thank you to them. My co-host in Tower Gang at Tower Gang Toad right here. This guy, go give him a follow. Also at AbrogateDs, at ZOVRCK, at _InfiniteZeal. Tim Tadu, you can follow him at Jolly on Klebold. Will Bell's Delicious Blueberry Rabbit Eye Wine, then big fan of the show. Torme, then at INWRID Lover. And with that, we are out of here. Love you all. Deuces. See you again soon.